The sun sagged low over the horizon, bleeding rust-red light across the dry ranch yard. Dust swirled in cruel little spirals as a man's boots dragged through it, scuffing hard against the ground. He wasn't walking alone. In his fist, tangled rope cut deep into the wrists of a young woman. Clara. Her dress was torn at the hem, dirt smeared across her cheek where she had stumbled. Her stepfather yanked her forward, his face twisted with whiskey and rage. "You think you're better than me? Better than your own blood?" His words slurred but sharp, spit flying as he jerked her to her knees. She winced, not from the fall but from the shame. Her eyes darted to the small circle of neighbors who'd paused their work, watching from porches and barn doors. Not a soul stepped closer. Not a soul spoke. He grabbed a ragged cloth from his saddlebag and flung it at her, draping it across her shoulders like a mockery. "Cover yourself. Can't stand the sight of you," he sneered. Clara's lips trembled. Her voice broke into the still air. "Spare me your gaze." Her plea wasn't only for him. It was for all of them, those who turned their eyes away, those who would rather watch dust settle than step into the storm. The stepfather's hand cracked across her face. The sound echoed like a whip. Clara fell sideways into the dirt, cheek stinging, cloth slipping from her shoulder. Silence thickened. Only the faint creak of a windmill, only the slow crunch of his boots as he circled her like a predator savoring the kill. "You'll learn your place," he muttered, shoving her down once more before spitting into the dust. His shadow stretched long and mean across her small frame. Clara swallowed hard, lifting her gaze to the sinking sun. Her eyes burned, but she did not weep. Somewhere deep inside her, fire still lived, though for now it was smothered under fear. The neighbors slowly vanished back into their homes, doors closing, shutters drawn. The world had turned its back. And as the last light drained from the horizon, Clara lay in the dirt, cloth clinging to her like a shroud, whispering into the silence, "Spare me your gaze." Night crept fast across the desert, the last streaks of orange fading into black. Clara's stepfather hauled her by the rope, his breath heavy with whiskey, his boots striking hard against the dry earth. He dragged her past the ranch fence out toward the old well that leaned crooked against the canyon edge. The land out here was emptier, crueler. Only coyotes and the cold wind bore witness. He shoved her down against the stone rim, rope biting deeper into her wrists. The rough edge scraped her skin raw. "Out here," he growled, his voice thick with hatred. "Nobody'll hear you. Coyotes'll get to you before sunrise." Clara's chest heaved, her lips parted, words barely escaping. "Please, you don't have to." His hand cracked against her cheek again, silencing her. The echo rolled across the canyon walls like thunder. "You keep that mouth shut," he hissed. "You've shamed me for the last time." He tightened the knot until her fingers turned cold, then staggered back, lantern swaying in his hand. For a moment the glow lit his face, twisted, hollow, rotten to the core. Then he snuffed the flame and left her in darkness. His boots faded into silence. Clara pressed her cheek to the stone, tears cutting lines through the dirt on her skin. She pulled at the rope until her wrists bled, but the knots held. The night grew colder. Above her, stars blinked, sharp and merciless. The moon cast silver across the canyon, pale light that revealed her every shiver, every struggle. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. Another answered. The sound carried across the emptiness, closer with each breath. Clara's heart pounded. She tried to scream, but her throat burned dry. All that came out was a hoarse whisper. "Not like this. Not tonight." The wind whipped her hair across her face, the desert night clawing at her body with icy fingers. Alone, tied, and left to die, her breaths grew shallow, her pulse weak. But deep within, a spark still fought against the darkness, fragile, but alive. Even as the coyotes closed in, Clara's eyes searched the horizon, refusing to surrender. And though she could not see it yet, A lantern's glow would soon cut through that endless night. The desert had gone silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the chest and made every breath feel stolen. Clara lay slumped against the well, rope biting cruel into her wrists. Her head hung heavy, eyes flickering between the shadows and the stars. Then, faint, distant, the creak of saddle leather, the slow rhythm of hooves against packed earth. A lantern swayed in the dark, its glow fighting the night. Clara's heart stumbled. She lifted her head, unsure if it was real or the fever of dying. The rider came closer, a broad figure on horseback, shoulders stooped, not from weakness but from years carrying burdens heavier than most men could bear. His beard was silvered, his coat worn by dust and storms. Elias, a rancher known in town for his quiet ways and steady hand. He pulled his horse to a stop, lantern casting a circle of gold over the well. His eyes fell on her. The bruises, the rope, the torn cloth across her shoulders. For a long moment he didn't move. The sight froze him. His blood ran cold. "Lord above," he muttered under his breath. Clara tried to shrink back, shame burning hotter than her wounds. Her voice was a broken thread. "Spare me your gaze." Elias stepped down from the saddle, boots crunching slow in the gravel. He knelt, the lantern glow catching the lines of his weathered face. He didn't speak, didn't question, just reached into his pocket, pulled a small knife, and began sawing through the rope. Clara flinched, but his hands were steady, gentle. The rope snapped free, falling like a serpent cut down. Elias lifted the cloth that hung loose across her frame. What he saw beneath, the purple welts, the raw skin, made his jaw tighten. His eyes, though steady, filled with something colder than anger. Clara trembled, clutching at the cloth, whispering again, "Don't look, please." He didn't. Instead, he took off his own coat, heavy and warm, draping it across her shoulders. "Easy now," his voice rumbled, low and certain. "You're safe." He gathered her into his arms, lifting her as though she weighed nothing at all. Lantern swinging, horse shifting, Elias turned toward the distant horizon. The desert wind howled, but for the first time that night, Clara felt its bite soften. The old ranch house stood quiet against the rolling dark, its timber walls silvered by moonlight. Elias pushed the door open with his shoulder, carrying Clara across the threshold. Hinges groaned, and the faint smell of smoke and pine greeted them. Inside, the fire already glowed low in the hearth, its crackling warmth chasing the night's chill. Elias set Clara gently into a wooden chair near the flames. She shrank back, pulling his coat tighter around her shoulders, her eyes darting to every shadow as though danger might slip through the cracks. He moved slow, deliberate. A man used to skittish animals, wounded things. Without a word, he set bread and a tin cup of water on the table in front of her. Clara's hands trembled as she reached. The rope burns on her wrists were raw, red. She tried to hide them beneath the sleeves, but Elias's eyes caught the sight. He said nothing, only placed a folded cloth beside her, as if offering her the choice to tend her wounds herself. The house creaked in the wind. Outside, the coyotes howled at a distance, but in here, the fire hummed a softer song. Clara broke a piece of bread, forcing herself to eat, her eyes lifted once, wary toward him. Why help me?" Her voice was hoarse, barely more than breath. Elias leaned against the mantel, arms crossed, gaze steady on the fire. "Because no one else did." She lowered her eyes, shame thick in her chest. "He'll come back," she whispered. Elias didn't flinch. "Let him." The words carried weight, like iron hammered slow. For a while, silence filled the space, not heavy, not cruel, but the kind that allowed her to breathe without fear. The firelight played across the timber beams, shadows dancing like spirits driven from the room. Clara's eyelids sagged, the warmth, the bread, the quiet. It was more safety than she'd felt in years. She fought it, afraid to trust sleep, but her body gave in. Elias draped a blanket over her shoulders before taking his rifle down from the wall. he moved to the porch, lantern in hand, standing sentinel beneath the stars. Inside, Clara slept by the fire, the flames reflecting the faintest trace of peace across her face. The fire had burned low, its glow painting the cabin walls in dull red. Outside, the prairie wind pressed hard against the boards, whistling through cracks like some restless spirit. Clara stirred on the chair, wrapped in Elias's blanket, her breath shallow but calm. Then it came, a sound that split the stillness. Thud, thud, thud. 3 heavy knocks rattled the wooden door. Elias straightened from his chair, rifle already in his hand. His boots thudded softly on the floor as he moved to the door, eyes narrowed, shoulders rigid. From the other side, a voice slithered through the timber, low, mean, soaked in whiskey. "Open up, rancher. She's mine. Always will be." Clara's eyes flew open. Her body shook, the blanket falling to the floor. She whispered, barely audible, "He's here." Elias glanced back at her, steady and calm, before answering. His voice cut through the night, flat as iron. "She ain't yours to claim. Not tonight. Not ever again." A laugh followed, harsh and cruel, Doctor lifting in from the darkness. "You think you can hide her? Think your walls can keep me out? I'll burn you to ash, old man." The door trembled under the weight of another strike. Clara pressed herself back against the chair, fingers digging into the wood. Her breath came fast, the memory of ropes and blows flooding back. Elias didn't flinch. He planted his boots firm on the floorboards, rifle at his side. "You've had your last day of doing harm. Leave." A long pause. Only the wind answered at first. Then the outlaw's voice came again, quieter but soaked in menace. "This ain't over. I'll come back with fire. And when I do, she'll beg me to end it quick." Elias kept the barrel aimed at the door, but the sound of boots crunching on gravel finally drifted away into the night. Silence returned. The coyotes howled far off, but inside the cabin the only sound was Clara's uneven breathing. Elias lowered the rifle slowly. "He's gone. For now." Clara buried her face in her hands, tears running hot, shame cutting deep. Elias stepped closer, voice calm but firm. "You're safe here. As long as I'm standing, no man lays a hand on you again." Outside, the wind pressed against the door, carrying with it the promise of a storm still to come. Dawn broke slow and pale, spilling cold light across the prairie. The air still carried the bite of night, and Clara pulled Elias's coat tight around her shoulders as the wagon rattled down the dirt trail. Every jolt sent a sharp reminder of the rope burns on her wrists, but she held her chin higher than before. Elias guided the reins, silent as always, his weathered face unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. The horse's hooves struck steady against the ground, a rhythm that spoke of purpose. Ahead, the town stirred awake. Smoke lifted from chimneys, dogs barked, doors creaked open. Folks paused to watch as the wagon rolled down Main Street. Clara felt their eyes, some curious, some pitying, others cold with judgment. She shrank beneath the coat, wishing she could vanish. The sheriff's office stood at the far end, its wooden sign swaying in the morning wind. Elias brought the wagon to a stop, stepped down, and offered Clara his hand. For a moment she hesitated, then, with trembling fingers, she took it. Inside, the office smelled of coffee and gun oil. Papers cluttered the desk, and a map of the territory hung crooked on the wall. Behind the desk sat Sheriff Alden, a man carved from the same wood as the land, broad, graying, eyes tired but steady. Elias spoke first. She was left for dead by her stepfather, tied and beaten. Clara's breath caught. Her voice quivered at the edges, but she forced herself forward. "He said the coyotes would take me before sunrise." The sheriff studied her, eyes narrowing. Then he leaned back, heavy sigh cutting through the silence. "That man's been a problem too long, but he ain't alone. He's got friends meaner than him, and desperate men follow desperate causes." Clara's hands clenched in Elias's coat. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "So there's no safety?" Sheriff Alden shook his head. "There is. Justice still rides in this town. but it takes grit to face wolves. Elias's jaw set. We'll face 'em. The sheriff stood, adjusting his gun belt. Then we start today. Word goes out. He's wanted. And when he comes again, he won't be riding free. The church bell rang outside, its solemn toll drifting in through the window. Clara closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, hope stirred. Fragile, but alive.